You know, one of the issues that I have with my hobby and this whole YouTube malarkey is that normally it's very easy to speak about a vacuum cleaner. Normally it's, modern or, vintage but common. But with machines like this, the Royal, it's quite difficult because this is an antique. It's also an American antique, which for me in the UK is a little bit of a pain. But, this is from 1920. This Hoover 612 is 30 years younger than it is. This Hoover Junior 1334 is, 30, 40 years newer than it. And, we consider these to be vintage. So I think I can now safely say a word that is a bugbear of mine in the vacuum cleaner collecting world, in that we have ourselves an antique vacuum cleaner, and I've seen the word antique be used for one of these, and it always sets me on edge. But no, legitimate antique. Let's see how it came out. Yes, hello my vacuum cleaner chums. How are you today? The Royal, or as I was told, is actually a PA Geier. Royal weren't fully Royal when this was made. This is very early, before they swapped the exit for the dirt to that side because it was more efficient. This is a very rare, very old, very simple, beautiful vacuum cleaner. As you know, when we unboxed the first one, it had this, it was all here. This is basically the first one on the exterior. So, but the wiring was all knackered. It was terrible. Who knows if it ran, because it didn't have a motor. So we then got a second one, amazingly. And I know it cost the owner a heck of a lot of money, that second one, because I saw the eBay listing myself. And here we have, using the best parts for both, mainly the motor for the second one, a complete Royal. I still don't actually know what it's called. It is a Royal. It was made by the Continental Electric Company Limited. And that's where PA Geier came in. Apparently PA Geier were the Continental Electric Company. 110 volts. It has the matching plaque to this, which has the number stamped underneath. And yeah, I'm actually going to take this off first because it's quite hard to push around. So we have the hard floor, sort of brush strip, really. It's quite fragile. The brushes do pull out a bit if you're not careful. So I'll pop that up there safely because we won't be needing that too much. As you can see, it flies around a lot better. Let's start at the top and then I can bring you a bit closer. So the handle is actually not touched, and I did and ah about painting this. Problem is, it matches where you put your hands. That is where the back of your palm sits. This is where your thumb sits, and it's taken 100 years for that patina, and I do not think it's been painted either, because there's such, there's no layers of paint and it's not coming off. I think it's the original finish, and I just couldn't get rid of it, especially since, well, you'll see the rest. It's not a shiny machine, and I don't think it ever was. Moving on, carrying on at the back, we have the switch, which apparently isn't original, but I would be amazed if someone said, "Oh, I've got one of those." Have it. It works very well, I'll be honest, and it's all wired up now. In fact, we'll start to take the cable off, and this is one of the many things that does make it seem a vintage machine. There are no quick release cord hooks. In fact, it's slow release because you have to sort of feed this past the clip. You can't just you know, give it a tug and hope for the best. You have to actually take the cable off the cord hooks. It has a modern black cable on it. In fact, every wire in this machine is new. You can see it coming out of there. That's always a sacrifice that I am very willing to make with older machines. I mean, unless the cable it's got is mint, I always replace it. The coil wires for the motor are original, but they've been heat shrunk because they might perish. It has our plastic modern 2-pin plug on it with hot glue because the cable strain relief on these is pretty terrible. Although this isn't going to get much use, you know, safety first. Yeah, this is really hard to describe this. Let's move down. In fact, let's take off the bag, which is again the original Royal bag. It's so faded. It didn't fade anymore when I washed it though. There's not a lot I can do. So what I did was fit inside, and my goodness, this took a while to trim it all off the edge. That has a SIBO HEPA bag in it, and you'll see when we turn it on in a minute, it has the slight downside of not puffing the bag right out, although I think the bag's so warm that there's no restriction. So the air comes through anyway. It puffs out the inner SIBO bag. And again, it's just a risk you have to take. Sadly. Always a compromise with something this old and this rare. Right, let me bring you down now and we'll look at the business end of this thing. Which is really, really simple. You have a motor, a fan and a suction nozzle. That is it. 3 wheels, and these are the only 3 wheels that survived its various posting adventures because they all smashed apart from these 3. So they're all on. The height adjuster works. You put it that way to sort of raise the back and lower the front. So now I can't really push it because it's jammed into the carpet. And to, you know, raise the height, you actually have to hold the little collar at the back in order for it to not bind up. And then you simply lower the machine for whatever reason you need. The suction is not that strong, so you have to really get it right. We'll have to play with that when we turn it on. Then we'll leave it like that for now. The 2 carbon brushes either side. We have a little oil. We have 2 oil parts actually. I always wondered if there was something at the back of there, but there's not, and it's had some oil, so I'm not going to put any more in. But that oils the back bearing, and then this little one here, which just pulls up, oils the front. Put that back on. The handle bail is ever so simple. In fact, you can sort of adjust it to bind up. It's, you know, there is a 1/3 of a turn difference in it, and then it parks up fairly well. The back side of that bolt goes behind the bracket, and again, it's not perfect, and it's probably never going to be perfect, but it does work. What else is there? Under here is where the wires sit to go into the machine. Actually, I can still pick some off because it was sort of insulated with probably asbestos. It looked like cardboard. I didn't touch it. What I did do was, when I can't take it off now, is when I screwed the cable in, I covered the whole thing in hot glue. Hopefully there's a photograph on your screen if I remember of that. And then I just put a little bit of hot glue around the extremities. It doesn't really sit on that well. The screws, I've seen, this machine has been in a bit of pain for that. The screws, they almost don't strip. They stretch because it's, you know, vintage technology. It really does. It doesn't bite in. I'm also noticing all the fingerprints all over it on my camera viewfinder, and it's not a shiny machine. It's been to Mr. Hooverlux to be polished, and he's done an absolutely fantastic job. In fact, amazingly, I've got the remains of the other one here in this box. And you can see it is a lot better, but it's not shiny sin. It is, you know, that Dorian spent a lot of time on that, and he said that's as good as he can get it. And it is fantastic. It has the better coil in it. This is the other field coil, which is absolutely filthy. Doesn't have a date stamp on this. It's the armature that has the date stamp, but you know, the wires have all perished. Yeah, I have lots of spares now. I don't quite know what to do with them. I need to work it out. I've got screws and bits. Oh no, there was an extra wheel that survived. So yeah, I need to find something to do with those. But yeah, there's all the components from the other one. But there you can see the fibre washer that seals this completely live connection as it bolts through the back of here. It's amazing how it all works. So yeah, it's not a shiny, you know, chrome bling machine, but it is absolutely spotless. Indeed. It has its fan, although you can't really see much because it's in there. So it's definitely an improvement on the last time I showed you inside of here, because it didn't have one at all. Now it does, and it spins very smoothly. Not entirely convinced that this really seals it at all, and I've been toying with putting a little drop of silicone around, because it is quite loose, just around there, basically sticking onto it. But I don't quite know how beneficial that will really be. There's the underneath. It's for somebody like me who is quite young in terms of the average age of the vacuum cleaner collecting community, it's almost archaic. It's beautiful. Let's put the bag on. The bag actually sits quite well. These two pegs here slide down this bracket here, and just pushing it down clamps it into place. So there's no tools required to get it on or off. You just push. And there it is. There's probably a horrific amount of air leakage from there as well, because you know, they didn't think to put a gasket in it back then. It just wasn't what people thought they needed to do. And here it is. What I need to do now is find my magic fairy box of tricks that converts the 240 volts that run through my house, hopefully to the right places, not via the pipes, into 110 volts, which this machine is. So I'm going to get all that set up, and then I'll show you how it runs. Well, we have power, and it's still raised up off the floor, because trust me, blocking the suction does affect this, and if I flick the switch, it runs! And it's, you know, for 100 years old, and that's again another thing that sort of messed with my mind a little bit. It's 100 years old. It doesn't sound as fast as even what we consider nowadays to be a very slow running vacuum cleaner. It runs slow and doesn't sound laboured as such, but it's not a screamer. It is literally a wafty, slow motor. Let's get the height adjusted as well as I can for this rug, which is a massive pain for this because it digs in, and show you how it actually vacuums. I'll turn it on for this. So I put some rice down. It should pick it all up. It slightly struggled before. It's just, so there's airflow, CFM, wattage wasn't a thing back then. Did it pick up better than a brush? Is basically the benchmark that we have here. get it close enough. Hang on. I think rice was a bit of a stupid test actually, because problem with this machine is there is literally 0.0001 millimetre difference between snow ploughing the rice and being too high to pick up the rice, because in the 1920s, you know, the war had just ended. Don't that foreign mucky Chinese rice on the floor. Let's try a bit of sawdust. Pretend we're in a pub. And again, you see, set just too high. The complete lack of, agitation really is very strong on this thing. And again, I had to raise it up to pick the surface up and then lower it right down to get the actual bits up. But it did it, and when you've got a machine that is literally the newest machine I have, that as much as it has many negative points, we are spoilt today with even cleaners like this, and it's really difficult to think how mind-bogglingly amazing this thing would have been in 1920s when your missus unpacked it and could get rid of the broom. I mean, how amazing would that be? It's really hard. I'm quite lost for words. This is a really difficult video to film, I'll be honest, because I can't quite wrap my head around how basic it is, and yet how it probably works as good as it would have done when it was new. It certainly shows just how far vacuum cleaner technology has come in 100 years. But come on well, in 100 years it has, and come on well, in a couple of months this Royal has. I'm probably struggling to think of anything older that I have or am going to have. The Electrolux Model 11 is, I think, 1923. So this is older than it. I don't know how many Hoover models. Comment below. Were there, what Hoover models are older than 1920s? I've got 1930s Hoover models. I think I've got a 1929 Hoover model. But pre this really is the infancy, we're only talking a decade since Mr. Murray Spangler sucked on a pillowcase and picked up dirt and then lobbed a broom on a desk fan and made the first vacuum cleaner. This is the history. This is everything that I do, everything that my fellow vacuum cleaner collectors do. It's down to machines like this, getting it, refining the design. The reason these are so rare is because about 2 or 3 years after this, they changed that to that side because they realised that the motor spinning span better the other way and kicked the dirt up. Hence why, actually, no, back to the Hoover Junior, it exits on this side. It has its fan at the front and kicks off, and again it exits better up there. So machines like this really did help refine the technology. I don't know if it ever came with tools. I think it probably did, because it's got a pretty handy tool port right there. But all we have is that and this brush trim, which I'm not going to demonstrate because again it just pushes everything out the way. It's really annoying because it works so well, yet it's quite terrible. But it's only quite terrible because it's so old, and it's this machine and the foibles of it that literally paved the way to the vacuum cleaners that we own today. So, it's done. Especially done now I filmed the after video. I'm just going to give it another polish because it's more fingerprinted than I thought. Sorry about that. And then it can go home to its owner. So, Rare treat, I think, got to be the oldest machine that we're going to have. It's going to take something to make it older to beat this. And thank you very much for watching. Thank you for your support, your comments, your likes, your subscribes, your messages. And I will see you soon. Bye bye.